The morning started like any other, until a knock at the door shattered everything she thought she knew about love, loss, and the man she buried. 3 years had passed since Evelyn Dunn buried her husband, or at least, what they gave her of him. James had boarded a plane to Mexico for a standard business meeting and never returned. No last call, no body, just debris from the crash, a consulate report stamped with the words, "presumed dead," and a wedding ring returned in a clear plastic bag. They held a service, a closed casket, kind words from strangers who never really knew him. And then life kept going. Except Evelyn didn't. The house shifted after that. The hallway lights stayed off. The windows stopped being opened. Rooms that once pulsed with conversation became still. She left James's office untouched, exactly as it was the day he left. Every drawer closed. Every book undisturbed. Sometimes, just to remember, she'd sit in the doorway and imagine she heard him typing. Most mornings she didn't feel much at all. That particular Monday, a soft rain had started before sunrise. It trailed slowly down the kitchen window, and Evelyn stood watching it with a mug of coffee cooling in her hands. She hadn't taken a sip. She hadn't needed to. The ritual was enough. She wore the same cream cardigan she always reached for on gray days, wrapped tightly around her body like armor. Her hair was pinned loosely, bare feet resting on the chilled tile. There was nothing planned for the day, just more quiet. Then the doorbell rang. She froze. No one visited, not without warning. The sound was out of place, foreign, almost surreal. It rang again, softer this time, and her body moved before her thoughts could catch up. She opened the door, and the world changed. Standing beneath the porch light was a small boy in a raincoat 2 sizes too large, the hood slipping slightly down over his brow. Rain dripped steadily from the fabric and traced shiny lines down his cheeks. But he didn't shiver. He didn't cry. He stood calmly, as if he'd rehearsed this moment in his mind 100 times. Clutched tightly to his chest was a white envelope. He looked up at her and asked in a clear, steady voice, "Are you Evelyn Dunn?" She hesitated. "Yes," she managed. He extended the envelope with both hands. "This is from my daddy. He said to give it to you." Her hand trembled as she took it. The weight of the paper didn't feel like much, but what was written on it nearly brought her to her knees. Her name, Evelyn, written in the one hand she would always recognize. James. His handwriting. That exact slant of the V, the way he curled the N like a wave. It was him. It couldn't be, but it was. She stared at the boy again. His eyes were slate gray with hints of ocean blue, James's eyes. His chin. Even the quiet way he stood, like someone used to holding back his feelings. "Who's your father?" she asked, though deep down she already knew. "James Dunn," he said. "He told me to come here. He said you're my mom." The floor shifted beneath her. Her voice left her. Her breath followed. She ushered him inside, not even thinking, just acting on instinct. He stepped in carefully, quietly, as if entering familiar territory. He didn't seem afraid, just waiting. She handed him a towel, sat him at the kitchen table, then opened the letter. The ink was a little smudged from water, but the first line was clear. "If you're reading this, Evie, it means I didn't make it back. But our son did." Her throat tightened. Her gaze flicked up to the boy, now swinging his feet beneath the chair. And in that moment, Evelyn Dunn realized 2 things. Her husband had kept a secret, and that secret had just come home. Evelyn didn't sleep that night. She tucked Jamie into the guest room, the one that had been sealed for years like a time capsule. The sheets were clean, but the air was heavy. She watched him climb into bed with the quiet ease of a child who had long ago learned not to ask too many questions. He didn't cry. He didn't ask for a bedtime story. He just looked at her and whispered, "Good night, Mom," before turning toward the wall. She sat in the hallway long after he fell asleep. The letter still in her lap, unfolded like a wound. The words on the page weren't long, barely half a sheet. James's handwriting, unmistakable, but different this time. Slower. Waited. As if he knew it would be the last time his hand ever touched paper. "If you're reading this, Evie, it means I didn't make it back. But our son did. His name is Jamie. I named him after both of us. He's smart. He's kind. And he deserves more than what I gave him." The rest of the letter read like guilt pressed through ink. Hints. Half-explained truths. No full confession. No timeline. No names. Just one line at the bottom in all caps. "If anything happens to me, take him to Mara." No address. No phone number. No last name. Just a single word. Mara. Evelyn stared at it like it might rearrange itself into meaning if she looked long enough. But it didn't. So she rose from the floor, crept back into the kitchen, and pulled out her old laptop. The internet search gave her nothing. Mara brought up hundreds of results, books, yoga instructors, travel blogs, but none that connected to James. None that connected to the child now asleep in her house. So she opened something she hadn't touched since the week after the funeral. James's old external drive. She hadn't been able to bring herself to delete it, but she also couldn't stomach seeing old travel photos or the spreadsheets from his firm. Still, something told her if a name like Mara meant anything, James would have kept it close, hidden in plain sight. He always had a talent for burying the most important things in the simplest places. She clicked through folders. Q1 reports. Client holdings. Mexico 2019. Personal. Inside the last one, she found a single Word doc, titled only, Safe. She clicked, and there, at the top of the page, was the sentence that made her blood run cold. In case of my death, Mara Delgado has everything. There it was. A full name. Mara Delgado. She skimmed down. Address. Puebla, Mexico. A small rural town outside the city. Evelyn had never heard of it, but James had gone there often for work. She remembered the itinerary. Remembered the way he always said he preferred the back roads over city hotels. Now she wondered if it had ever been business at all. Was Mara his contact? A guardian? A woman he trusted? A woman he loved? The thought slammed into her like wine through a broken window. Evelyn didn't consider herself a jealous woman, but grief sharpened every unanswered question. And this woman, this stranger, had her son for 6 years, had raised him, protected him, hidden him. Why? And more importantly, why hadn't James told her any of it while he was alive? She printed the page, folded it once, then walked back to the guest room. Jamie was still asleep, mouth slightly open, one small hand curled beneath his cheek. She stood in the doorway for a long time, watching. She didn't know what kind of man James had become in the years before he died. She didn't know if she was holding the consequences of betrayal or the result of his final act of love. But she knew one thing. Tomorrow, she would find Mara Delgado. And maybe, finally, she'd find the truth buried with her husband. Evelyn had been to Mexico once in her life, a honeymoon, 15 years ago. Coastal air, tequila sunrises, bare feet on marble tiles. But this trip wasn't a vacation. This was a resurrection. A hunt. She left Jamie with her sister in New Haven, promising to call every night. He hadn't asked why she was going. He didn't ask much at all, as if something in him already understood that the answers were never going to be simple. She landed in Puebla just past noon, hot, dry, humming with market chatter and the scent of grilled meat wafting through narrow streets. The address on the printed page led her down from the cobbled center into quieter, older roads, the kind tourists never touched. The house was modest. Stucco walls, faded green shutters, a clay roof that looked like it had weathered everything but the truth. A rusted wind chime swayed gently near the door. She hesitated on the steps, the paper in her hand soft from being folded too many times. Then she knocked. There was a pause, then the slow slide of a lock. A woman opened the door, late 40s, olive skin, dark eyes sharp as glass. She wore a linen blouse, loose pants, and a face that didn't flinch. "Are you Mara Delgado?" Evelyn asked. The woman looked her up and down. "You must be Evelyn." Not a question. Evelyn's heart kicked against her ribs. "How do you know who I am?" Mara didn't answer. She stepped aside. Evelyn entered. The house smelled like jasmine and old wood. A ceiling fan turned lazily overhead. On a shelf near the window sat framed photographs, landscapes, candles, and one that nearly made Evelyn stumble. It was James, holding a newborn. His smile small. His eyes tired but proud. In the corner of the frame and faded marker were the words, "Mi hijo." Jamie, 2017. Evelyn turned slowly. "You raised him?" Mara nodded. "From the moment he was born." "Why didn't he tell me?" Mara crossed her arms. "Because he didn't know how. Because it wasn't planned. Because by the time he found out you couldn't have children, he had already made a mistake that couldn't be undone." Evelyn's stomach turned. "So I was, what? The wife without the baby? And you were I was the woman he ran to when he broke." Mara's voice wasn't cruel. It was tired. Evelyn swallowed hard. "Was it an affair?" Mara shook her head. "It was a collapse. He thought you hated him after the miscarriage. He thought he couldn't fix what broke between you. I didn't ask him to stay. He just did." The room spun softly. "He came back to me," Evelyn whispered. "Yes. but not before he left Jamie behind. With me. A silence fell, thick and unrelenting. Why didn't you ever contact me? Evelyn asked. Mara tilted her head. Because I didn't know if you were the kind of woman who'd want a reminder or want revenge. I would have wanted the truth. Mara nodded once. So did he. But by the time he realized what he had done, what he had lost, he was already sick. Evelyn's eyes narrowed. Sick. Mara looked down. The crash wasn't an accident. He was dying. He wanted to disappear before the illness took him completely. Evelyn felt the words hit like gravel. He knew about the crash in advance, Mara continued. Paid a pilot. Left the ring. Wrote you the letter. He thought, if he could send Jamie back to you, maybe you could forgive him. Or at least, finish the story. Evelyn stepped back. Her legs were trembling. The truth wasn't just complicated. It was constructed. James hadn't died in the crash. He had used it to die on his own terms, to protect the boy he never had the courage to raise properly and the woman he never stopped loving. Evelyn didn't know what to say. She stared at the woman who had filled the gaps in his life, held his child, and carried his secrets. And then Mara said quietly, he left Jamie to you because he believed you could give him the life he never could. But he didn't just send him to you. Evelyn blinked. What do you mean? Mara walked to a drawer, pulled out a small envelope, and handed it to her. It was newer, labeled in the same handwriting. To Evelyn, for when she's ready. Inside, an address, a photo, and one final secret. The second envelope was thinner than the first, folded only once, tucked carefully in the bottom of the drawer, as though it had waited in silence for the right moment to speak. On the front, in James's careful, slanted hand. To Evelyn, for when she's ready. Not if. When. As if he always knew she would come looking. Mara didn't say much more after that. Just gave her a look that held decades of secrets and stepped into the next room, giving Evelyn space. So Evelyn sat alone in that small Mexican kitchen, surrounded by dust and jasmine, and peeled open the seal. Inside, there wasn't a confession. Not an apology. Not even a goodbye. It was a name, a date, and an address. Below that, clipped to the paper, was a photograph. And it nearly stopped Evelyn's heart. It was James, older than she remembered, with more gray at his temples, the same calm expression he always wore when he was bracing her for something difficult. He stood with his arm around someone, a teenager, a girl, maybe 13, maybe 14. She had James's eyes. The message beneath was handwritten in the corner. Find her. She's yours, too. Evelyn gripped the paper like it might explode. Her entire body had gone cold. She stumbled out of the chair and turned to Mara. Her voice cracked before it even fully left her throat. There's another child? Mara nodded slowly, like she'd known this part would come. She's in the States. He kept her a secret from both of us. She was born before Jamie. Before me. Her name is Clara. Evelyn felt like the floor had disappeared under her feet. You mean, he had a daughter before he even married me? No, Mara said gently. He had her during. Silence fell like glass shattering in slow motion. Evelyn stood still, every cell in her body screaming to move, to scream, to cry, to run. But all she could do was hold the photo, the proof, and realize that her husband had not lived one life, but three. The man she'd loved. The man who fathered her son without telling her. And now, the man who had left behind a daughter, with a stranger's face and her husband's eyes. The flight back felt endless. She didn't cry on the plane. Didn't sleep either. She just stared at the photo and tried to memorize the lines of the girl's face, as if knowing her would help soften the betrayal. But nothing softened it. Not Jamie's smile when she walked through the door. Not her sister's gentle offer to stay longer. Not the quiet hum of home. Everything felt temporary, like she was living someone else's story. She tucked Jamie into bed that night without saying much. He was sweet, trusting, happy to be back. And Evelyn kissed his forehead with the sinking weight of knowing that whatever normal she was pretending to build, it wasn't the whole truth anymore. Not even close. Later, when the house had gone still again, she sat at her kitchen table, the same one where Jamie had handed her the first envelope, and stared at the address James had given her. It wasn't far. Just one state over. Ohio. She searched the name. Found a school. A birthday. The girl was 16 now. Her name was Clara Jensen. Different last name. Different life. Raised by a single mother. No legal ties to James. No public record. But she existed. She was real. She was out there. Evelyn didn't know why he had hidden her. Didn't know what had gone wrong. All she knew was that James had buried this girl in silence, and handed Evelyn the shovel. She could walk away, pretend it never existed. But something in her, something deeper than betrayal, deeper than grief, told her she couldn't leave Clara Jensen in the dark just because James had. That wasn't for his protection anymore. That was for hers. So she picked up her keys, folded the letter, and packed a bag. Because this time, Evelyn wasn't just chasing the truth. She was chasing the child no one wanted her to find. The drive to Ohio felt different than Mexico. More personal, more intimate, less like chasing a ghost and more like staring directly into one. Evelyn didn't rush. She drove through back roads, stayed off the highways, stopped at gas stations where no one knew her name. She needed the quiet. She needed the hum of the tires and the empty miles to buffer the truth that sat in her passenger seat, folded up and trembling like a heartbeat. Clara Jensen, 16 years old, lives with her mother, goes to Northridge High. The girl didn't exist on social media. Not publicly. No Instagram. No Facebook. Just a single school photo on a fundraising website from last year. Slate gray eyes, long dark hair pulled into a braid over one shoulder. A forced smile. Something in her eyes looked restrained. Familiar. Evelyn had seen that look before. In the mirror. In Jamie. In James, when he knew something he couldn't say. She parked across from the school, watching students trickle out of the brick building in loose clusters. Some ran for buses, others drifted toward waiting cars. She didn't know what she was waiting for until she saw her. Clara. Same jawline. Same eyes. Same way of scanning the crowd like someone who doesn't expect to be noticed. Evelyn stepped out of the car slowly, heart slamming against her ribs, palms clammy. Clara walked alone. Headphones in. Backpack slung too low. Evelyn crossed the street, pulse loud in her ears. Clara, she said softly as the girl passed. Clara stopped, just for a second, then pulled out one earbud and turned. Her eyes landed on Evelyn. Not confused, not curious, just still. I was wondering when you'd show up, Clara said. Evelyn froze. You knew about me? Clara nodded once. He told me. A while ago. Said your name was Evelyn. Said you were. Good. Evelyn nearly staggered. He talked to you? Not much. Letters mostly. I never met him. Just once. When I was little. But Mom said he came by every year. Left money. Sometimes a note. Sometimes nothing. Clara looked away, adjusting the strap of her bag. He wasn't a father. Not really. Just a name. A shadow. Evelyn swallowed the lump in her throat. Did you know about Jamie? I found out last year. One of the letters mentioned him. I think he wanted to tell me earlier. I think he just didn't know how. Clara's voice didn't tremble. She spoke like someone who had made peace with disappointment long before she knew it had a name. Evelyn stepped closer. I don't know what I'm supposed to be to you, Clara. I didn't know about you until a week ago. But I think you deserve more than a man who kept you hidden. Clara raised her eyebrows. You mean your husband? The question hit harder than she expected. I mean your father, Evelyn said, steadying her voice. Silence stretched between them, not angry, not cold, just full. Finally, Clara sighed. My mom says I don't have to forgive him, but I don't hate him either. I think he was scared, like most men who try to love two lives at once. Evelyn blinked, stunned by the clarity in the girl's words. That's not fair to you. Life isn't fair, Clara said simply, but we still get to decide who we want to be in it. She looked at Evelyn again, this time for real. Not guarded, not distant. So, are you here to take me too? Evelyn's heart clenched. No, she whispered. I'm here to give you a choice. They stood in silence for a moment longer. Then Clara surprised her. She reached into her backpack, pulled out a folded letter, old, wrinkled. The ink faded. He wrote this to you. Never sent it. I found it in a box of his things after my mom moved. I think you were supposed to read it eventually. Evelyn took it gently. The paper felt like it hummed with something unfinished. She didn't open it yet. Instead, she asked, would you like to meet your brother? Clara hesitated. Just a blink. Then nodded. Yeah, she said. I think it's time. Jamie waited by the front window like he always did when Evelyn left town. Silent, curious, never fully asking why she was gone or when she'd be back. He didn't need to. He just watched. But this time, when her car pulled into the driveway, there was someone in the passenger seat. He stood straighter. The door opened slowly. Evelyn stepped out first. Then the girl followed. Jamie squinted. She looked older, taller. Her hair was darker, tied back in a braid. She didn't smile, but her face wasn't cold either. Just careful. Evelyn opened the door before Jamie could ask. "Jamie," she said gently, "there's someone I want you to meet." Clara stepped into the foyer like she'd been there once, maybe in a dream. Jamie tilted his head. "Who is she?" Evelyn knelt beside him. "Her name is Clara. She's your sister." Jamie's eyes widened. He didn't move right away, just stared. The weight of the words seemed to hang in the air like mist. Clara offered a small, unsure wave. "Hey." Jamie nodded slowly. "Hi." Silence filled the space between them, long, stretching, but not uncomfortable. It felt like the world had paused for them. Evelyn watched them cautiously, unsure whether to speak or give them room. Jamie finally stepped forward. "You want to see my room?" Clara's lips lifted just slightly. "Sure." And just like that, they disappeared down the hallway, two shadows, suddenly whole. Evelyn stayed frozen in place, heart heavy, knees weak. The letter Clara had given her burned in her jacket pocket. She waited until the house fell quiet again. Jamie and Clara were in the living room now, watching cartoons in soft stillness, like they'd always known about each other and had simply been waiting for the reunion. Evelyn sat at the kitchen table alone. Same table, same chair, same envelope. She unfolded it slowly. The paper crackled. The handwriting was James's. Not hurried. Not like the last two. This one was more measured. The ink pressed deeper into the paper, like he'd held every word longer than he should have. "Evie, I don't know where to begin, so I'll begin with the truth. Clara was born the year we lost our baby. And no, I didn't cheat. I didn't lie at first. But I did fall apart. After the miscarriage, I broke in a way I didn't know how to explain to you. You were strong. You kept moving. You faced the world while I started drinking more and coming home less. You remember that. I know you do." Evelyn's chest tightened. Clara's mother was someone I met at a project site. It wasn't meant to be anything. But one night, I talked too long. She listened too closely. I didn't even know about Clara until she was almost 2. And by then, I was already back with you, trying to make us work. I wanted to tell you. God, I did. So many times. But how do you tell the woman who's grieving a child that another one exists, one she didn't know about? I knew it would destroy everything. Then Jamie happened. Evelyn's hand trembled. I didn't expect Mara. I didn't expect love again. But it wasn't the same. Not like with you. With her, it was refuge. With you, it was fire. I never stopped loving you, Evie. I just stopped believing I deserved you. When the diagnosis came, I didn't tell anyone. Not Mara. Not Clara. Not even Jamie. I had maybe 6 months. So I bought a name on a manifest and faked a crash. It was cowardly. But I thought, if I disappeared, maybe you could finally live again without waiting on my shadow. I'm sorry. For all of it. For the girl I didn't tell you about. For the boy I couldn't raise right. For the love I let rot in silence. But if you're reading this now, then somehow you found them. And if there's one thing I believe, it's this. You were always the one who could hold more than your share of heartbreak and still offer something beautiful back. Don't hate me. Not forever. James. The letter slid from her fingers to the table. Outside, she could hear Jamie laugh. Just once. A soft ripple. Clara echoed it, lower, almost surprised at herself. It wasn't a perfect sound, but it was whole. Evelyn wiped her face, though she didn't remember crying. She didn't know if she'd ever forgive James. But in this house, in this moment, she wasn't just grieving anymore. She was mothering. She was choosing. And somehow, in the wake of all he'd broken, James had given her the only thing that might heal. A family not built by design, but by return. For the first time in years, Evelyn heard the sound of footsteps racing down her hallway. It happened the next morning early, just after sunrise. Jamie was already awake, dragging Clara by the wrist toward the kitchen, eager to show her how to make pancakes shaped like dinosaurs. Clara, bleary-eyed but smiling in a way that made her eyes round and real, didn't resist. She followed him, quietly, naturally, like she had always been part of this house. It felt like watching someone paint color back onto a photo you assumed would stay black and white forever. They moved together through the kitchen, spilled flour, eggshells, giggles when one of the dinosaurs looked more like a puddle than a T-Rex. Evelyn stood back, arms crossed, mouth tugged into a smile she didn't try to hide. Clara had only been there for 2 days, but already she had taken up space like sunlight, not loud, not intrusive, just present, warm. Jamie adored her. She wasn't sure if it was admiration or comfort, but the boy glowed when she was near. Still, Evelyn didn't fool herself. Clara was 16, smart, reserved. and beneath her calm was a wall she had built long before Evelyn had ever known her name. And Evelyn knew from experience, it's the quiet ones who carry the deepest burns. Later that evening, Clara sat alone on the back steps, watching the wind move through the trees like waves. Evelyn brought her tea without asking, then sat down beside her, careful to leave just enough space. "I don't know what I'm doing," Evelyn admitted softly. Clara looked over, brow lifted. "You seem like you do." "I don't. Not really. I don't know how to be a mom to someone who didn't grow up with me." Clara was quiet for a moment, then said, "You don't have to be. You're here now." Evelyn felt her chest pull tight, not from pain, but from something gentler. The kind of ache that comes when a wound finally begins to close. But healing, as always, wasn't meant to be uninterrupted. The knock on the door came just before midnight. Evelyn had almost ignored it. She assumed it was a package left late or a neighbor with the wrong house. But when she opened the door, the woman standing there wasn't a stranger. Not to Clara. Not to James. She was tall, mid-40s, thin-framed, hair pulled back tight. There was a tiredness behind her eyes that didn't come from lack of sleep. It came from secrets carried too long. Clara appeared behind Evelyn almost instantly. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Mom." Evelyn turned. The woman gave a tight nod. "I'm sorry. I just needed to see that she was okay." Clara didn't move. "You said you didn't want to come." "I didn't. But you didn't come home either. And I didn't want to lose you. Not like this." Evelyn could see the storm building behind Clara's eyes, not rage, but something older. Something like betrayal. "You didn't tell me he was writing to you," Clara said. "All those years. You knew." "I did it to protect you," the woman said, stepping forward. "I didn't want you waiting for someone who would never show up." Clara folded her arms. "He was my father. I had a right to know." "You had a right to be happy." Her mother snapped, and then immediately softened. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean. I just didn't know how to explain him to you." Evelyn stepped aside. "You can come in." The woman blinked. "Are you sure? No one else should be standing outside in the dark tonight." They sat around the kitchen table, the same table where the letters had been read, the confessions absorbed. Clara's mother, Angela, explained what she could. The affair hadn't been long. James had been kind, but distant. He never promised anything. When Angela got pregnant, he had offered support but kept his distance, never asking for involvement. Just quiet. Just time. Evelyn listened. She didn't interrupt. There was no jealousy left. Only a deep ache for the years she'd never reclaim, the daughter she could have known, the woman she might have met sooner. "I think Clara should choose where she wants to be," Angela said eventually. Clara looked between them. Two women. Two truths. One home. Evelyn didn't speak. She didn't beg. She just said, "You'll always have a place here." Clara didn't answer right away. She just reached across the table and took Evelyn's hand. It was small, simple, but it was everything. Angela didn't stay long. She drank half a cup of tea, spoke quietly with Clara, and asked Evelyn only one question before leaving. "Did James leave you anything else?" Evelyn paused. "You mean besides Jamie? Besides the letter?" Angela nodded. "He kept records. Photos. Journals. Financials. I never saw much, but I know he was always writing things down. Things he never mailed. He told me once that if anything ever happened to him, his life would be in a box." Evelyn blinked. "He said that." Angela's voice lowered. "I think he knew what he was doing in the end. Disappearing like that, it was a choice. He made peace with it in a way I never understood. But it always felt like he left a trail behind, like he wanted someone to find him after he was gone. Someone who could carry it right." Evelyn's stomach turned. She nodded slowly, but she didn't respond. "Not yet." Angela hugged Clara one last time, whispered something neither Evelyn nor Jamie could hear, and slipped quietly out into the night. Evelyn stood in the doorway for a while, staring at nothing, her thoughts circling like vultures. A box. A trail. He wanted someone to carry it. But why her? The attic hadn't been touched in almost 4 years. It still smelled like cedar and dust, like storage and memory. She clicked on the old pull-string light, and the yellow bulb hummed above her. There were boxes labeled by year. Holiday decorations. Contracts. Clothes too big for donation and too sentimental to toss. She found it in the far corner, beneath an old trunk of college essays and broken photo frames. A simple wooden box with a brass clasp. No lock. No markings. Just weight. She carried it downstairs, heart pounding, breath tight. Clara and Jamie were asleep. The house was quiet again, but no longer empty. She sat at the kitchen table, laid out the box, and opened the lid. Inside were envelopes, dozens, all dated, all addressed but never sent. Some to Clara, some to Jamie, some to her. Old photos, bank receipts, handwritten letters with creased corners and underlined passages. Journal pages that didn't read like journal pages. They read like confessions. Like a man trying to stitch two lives together before the seams tore. One envelope caught her eye. It wasn't yellowed like the others. It looked newer, labeled, "To Evelyn and Angela, together." Her breath caught. She opened it slowly. "If you're reading this, then you've both found each other. That means everything I couldn't say has already started to unravel. I don't know if you'll hate me. I wouldn't blame you. But I hope, somehow, you both understand. I didn't leave because I stopped loving either of you. I left because I didn't know how to live in a world where both of you existed, and I couldn't be enough for either. You were both homes to me, and I ruined them with silence. But this box, this is everything. My will, my journal, the records, the money, all of it. It belongs to the two of you. Together. Split it. Share it. Burn it. Do whatever you want. But promise me one thing. Don't leave the kids divided. Don't let my cowardice cost them each other. Whatever comes next, let it start with truth. James." Evelyn stared at the letter until her vision blurred. She hadn't expected this. Not from him. Not for her. He wasn't asking for forgiveness anymore. He was asking for collaboration. For unity. For the impossible. The next morning, Evelyn called Angela. Told her about the box. Read her the letter. Paused for the long silence that followed. When Angela finally spoke, her voice was soft but clear. "I want to come back. For Clara. For Jamie. For us. I think it's time we stop letting James decide what this family looks like." Evelyn nodded, even though Angela couldn't see it. Agreed. They didn't talk long. They didn't need to. Some things, when shared honestly, don't need explanation. They only need action. Later that day, Jamie and Clara sat on the living room floor, sorting through old photos from the box. There were pictures of James in places they'd never seen. On a fishing boat, standing beside a jeep, holding a tiny baby Evelyn didn't recognize. "Who's that?" Jamie asked. Evelyn knelt beside him. "A mistake," she whispered. "And a memory. And maybe a lesson." Clara looked up. "So what are we now?" Evelyn met her eyes. "Whatever we choose to be." And for the first time since the knock on the door, there was peace. Not perfect, not permanent, but real. They didn't throw away the box. They didn't burn it, either. It stayed tucked neatly on the top shelf of Evelyn's study. No longer a secret, no longer something to fear. Just a box full of unspoken words, frozen versions of a man who had never known how to live a life in one direction. And somehow, it no longer haunted her. Weeks passed, then months. Angela came back, not to reclaim anything, but to add to it. She brought photo albums Clara had never seen, voicemails, a few drawings James had mailed when Clara was younger, always unsigned, always folded with care. They sat together one evening, the four of them, Evelyn, Angela, Jamie, Clara, on a porch that hadn't seen so many lights on in years. The old wind chime above the door still swayed in the breeze. This time, it didn't sound hollow. Jamie was telling Clara about a school project. He was animated, tripping over words, excited about volcanoes and baking soda and how his model had actually exploded across the science fair table. Clara listened with that half-smile she wore now, less cautious, more real. She didn't just hear him. She cared. Angela watched the two of them with quiet, maternal pride. And Evelyn? Evelyn simply breathed. There were no lines drawn anymore. No definitions. No DNA tests or court orders. No blood ties or marriage licenses. Just shared silence, overlapping grief, and the decision to begin again. Later that night, after the kids had gone to bed, Evelyn stood alone in the kitchen, wrapping up the remains of dinner when Angela stepped in. "Do you regret it?" Angela asked. Evelyn didn't turn. "Regret what?" "Letting her stay. Letting me stay." Evelyn shook her head. "No, not anymore." Angela leaned against the counter. "I used to hate you." Evelyn smiled faintly. "I used to hate myself." That hung there between them, not sharp, not accusing. Just true. Angela glanced toward the hallway. "I think James loved you more." Evelyn met her eyes. "Maybe, but I think he trusted you more." Neither woman cried. They just stood there, bonded not by the man who broke them, but by the children they chose to raise beyond him. Spring came late that year. The last scene of snow melted in slow drips off the roof. The daffodils by the driveway bloomed unevenly. Clara started applying to art schools. Jamie planted a sunflower in the yard, insisting it would grow taller than the porch. Evelyn didn't argue. She had stopped measuring things in certainty, only in effort and presence. One day, Jamie came into her room holding one of the letters from the box, one James had written to him, years ago, meant for his 18th birthday. "Can I read it?" he asked. Evelyn paused. "You can, but only if you're ready." Jamie thought for a moment, then set the letter down, untouched. "I'm not yet," he said, "but I will be." And she smiled. That's all that matters. They never had a funeral for James. Not a second one. But they did something better. One afternoon, they drove out past the ridge, Clara, Jamie, Angela, and Evelyn, and stood on a cliff that looked over a quiet lake James had once photographed in a journal. They brought a framed photo of him, not the polished one from his firm, not the one in a suit. The one where he was on a dock, barefoot, laughing, holding a little girl in one arm and a beer in the other. They said nothing grand. No speeches. No forgiveness offered or begged for. They just laid the photo on the rocks, lit a candle, and stood close, letting the wind carry what was left of the man who'd fractured their lives, and somehow made space for them to finish the story he never had the strength to write. Back at home that evening, Evelyn tucked Jamie into bed. Clara came by the door to say goodnight, pausing only long enough to squeeze Evelyn's hand. And as she turned off the lights, closed the doors, and listened to her home settle into night, Evelyn realized something that hadn't occurred to her in years. The silence was still there, but this time, it didn't feel empty. It felt full.